Deputy Speaker.
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, for allowing me to join this debate. Mr. Speaker, many of my colleagues on the other side would have mentioned we blaming the parents alone, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the amendment that the Honorable Minister of Public Administration made to the 2012 Children's Act, we will both blame both parents and children. I remember in 2012, where I myself was a victim of cyberbullying, Madam Deputy Speaker. Someone who I thought was my friend made untruthful comments of me on Facebook. Madam Deputy Speaker, this drastically changed my mindset. I started feeling depressed, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, I was so afraid to go to school the next day that I arrived to school late. When I went to school the next day, Madam Deputy Speaker, I felt as though my self-esteem dropped. My classmates made fun of me. I was called all the names that you could think about. And this is why, Mr. Speaker, based on my own experience, Mr. Speaker, I support the government motion by the government. I support this motion by the government. This government proposes two things. One, signal to parents that responsibility for child rearing are serious. Neglect and apathy is unacceptable. Secondly, Madam Deputy Speaker, we must also ensure that failure to accept the responsibility for reasonable parenting is a criminal offense. Neuroscientists have discovered that the brain, which includes the prefrontal cortex, develops at age 25, Madam Deputy Speaker. Therefore, we cannot accept that persons under the age of 18 are responsible, Madam Deputy Speaker. Dr. Sandra Amout, neuroscientist and co-author of the book, Welcome to Your Child's Brain, mentioned that between 18 and 25 years, it's a continuation in the process from puberty, Madam Deputy Speaker. Therefore, parents should be held accountable and should focus more on their children. Madam Deputy Speaker, she also suggested that laws should be changed because of this development, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, she also suggested that parents should be held accountable. And this is why the government proposed this motion today, because we believe that parents should be held accountable for their children's social media activities. As mentioned by the mover of the motion earlier, the Minister of Public Administration, my ministry allocated some $7.548 billion for education and training, of which a percentage will be used for training in ICT for both parents and children. Mr. Speaker, we need to remember that this government, I would like to tell the opposition members that this government is a caring government. This government is a government that supports the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, and therefore, we would like to let the opposition know that we are here for the people. Madam Deputy Speaker, this government is giving parents the tools for greater responsibility in handling social media, which can be a deadly tool if not handled right. Madam Deputy Speaker, I will end by saying this. We, the government, know that parental responsibility laws for social media activities for children in Trinidad and Tobago are necessary. Madam Deputy Speaker, I thank you.
Member for Komoto Manzanilla.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, for affording me the opportunity to take part in this debate today. Spare the rod, spoil the child. Madam Speaker, for too long we have spared the rod and spoiled our children. It is now time we regain control of our youth and stop playing the blame game. According to the Ministry of Gender, Youth and Child Development, of a 2015 National Parenting Policy states the role of a parent, and I quote, "The role of a parent serves to provide children with love, a sense of identity within the family extending to wider society, a safe and secure environment in which self-expression is encouraged and in which questions can be explored, where universal morals are instilled, and finally where childhood can be enjoyed," end quote. Madam Deputy Speaker, this policy in no way infers that parents should accept accountability for their child's wrongful actions. Madam Deputy Speaker, part of the learning process of a child ought to be the acceptance of their own wrongdoing and learn from it. I beg this honorable House to consider what message are we sending to our youth. Are we going to teach our future generation that their wrongdoing should just be blamed by others? Furthermore, Madam Deputy Speaker, according to the Cybercrime Bill of 2017, which is in front a Joint Select Committee, states, and I quote, Clause 18, "The offense of causing harm to a person through communication via a computer system. This offense would carry a fine of $100,000 and 3 years imprisonment on summary convictions, or a fine of $250,000 and 5 years imprisonment on conviction on indictment." Madam Deputy Speaker, if this government would like to create legislation similar to this, it is beyond absurd and ridiculous for a child or parent to have to face. It seems as though this government doesn't care about our future generation, because if they did, they would allow them to be convicted or prosecuted for their crimes. Could we just imagine what our future would look like if persons were not convicted for their crimes? Madam Deputy Speaker, we, the opposition, would like to work and have discussions with the government. We would like to implement policies and programs instead of legislation. We suggest that the Ministry of Gender, Youth and Child Development, in collaboration with the Ministry of Security, create rehabilitation or correctional programs in which a child and a parent can attend. Madam Deputy Speaker, in this way, the child would learn from their wrongdoings and in fact would have the support of their parent. We think that support is necessary for the children. In conclusion, Madam Deputy Speaker, we, the opposition, believe adopting legislation is not necessary, but instead creating policies and implementing programs are the better route to combat this pertinent issue. In closing, I would like to say that for every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction, so the youth of this generation should consider that before they commit their crimes. Thank you.
Minister of Communications.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, for allowing me to join today's debate. Madam Deputy Speaker, as a modern-day user of social media, I can tell you that teenagers misuse social media on a daily basis. Everyone in this house here can agree that almost every day, a new video of school children fighting another student outside the compound is circulated. Every day, a 15-year-old girl is bullied online. Our parents are so quick to join in this circulation and repost these videos, but are almost never quick or interested to wonder if their child was the one recording the video, or if their child is one of the 15-year-old girls' online bullies. The majority of these social media platforms have minimum age restrictions of up to 13 years old. And according to the motion, this minimum age restriction does not prevent children from using social media. That is why we, the government, wish to make amendments to legislature. That is why we, the government, wish to make amendments to the justice system to hold parents accountable for their children's online social media behavior. Therefore, where a child under the age of 16 utilizes social media in a way that is deemed harmful to society, the court can hold the parents and guardians liable for the actions of that child, whereby the parent or guardian has failed to exercise due diligence in supervising that child and his or her online presence. Now, earlier on, the member for Chaguanas West used the excuse that parents cannot supervise their children 24/7. But what the member fails to realize that a parent being unaware of their child's social media whereabouts can be categorized as a form of neglect. And might I remind that member that parental negligence in the eyes of the court is reprehensible. Furthermore, the member for Naparima gave the scenario about the single mother as an excuse as to why single parents cannot supervise their children at all times. But I come from a single parent home. Yet my mother, a mother of 3, made it her business to link her email account to my 12-year-old sister's email account to monitor what apps she downloaded and who she is in contact with. So really, there is no excuse. In addition to this, I've heard the opposition say countless times today that because parents are not born in Generation Z, makes them not computer literate enough or well-versed in technology. But we have a solution to this, right? If the parent is the one giving the child a device, shouldn't it be the parent's duty to educate themselves on how this device works? Shouldn't it? Now, as the Minister of Public Administration said earlier on, that the government will work to establish a body under the Children's Authority and known as the Social Media Ethics Committee, and this committee shall manage a social media rehabilitation program for parents and children who are deemed liable by the court for specific offenses related to social media, namely cyber-stalking, cyberbullying, and distribution of childhood pornography. So here we are, the government, providing the parents with the means to educate themselves on how social media and technology works. But it is the duty of the parent to put what they've learned into practice and exercise due diligence in supervising their children and their social media whereabouts. Mr. Speaker, before I conclude today, I would like to ask the opposition this question. If a child is, let's say, a cyberbully, what would you do to that child? Would you arrest that child or would you charge that child? I understand that to some extent, children need to be disciplined, but the fact that parents are responsible for the maintenance and protection of that child makes them liable. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Princeton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask the Minister of Public Administrations if he did his research before coming to the House here today. Because had he done his research, he would have learned that the Snapchat feature he made reference to earlier on could be turned on and off at the user's discretion. He would have also learned, Mr. Speaker, that the only way Snapchat can view and then share your GPS location is if you give the app permission to do so, Mr. Speaker, thereby negating the whole issue he raised. Mr. Speaker, I have sat here for a very long time and I have heard the government's contributions thus far. And it seems that the government will have this nation believe that social media and smart technology is a monster that must be kept away from our children. With the Minister of Energy and Energy Affairs going as far as to question, why should parents give their child smart devices? I'd like the Minister to pay attention while I answer him here now. Parents recognize the social and educational benefits of social media. I hope the competent Minister of Education will go into the educational benefits. But according to a report read before the House of Commons, 68% of teenagers reported receiving emotional support online. 62% of teenagers reported that social media had a positive impact on their relationships. Mr. Speaker, that report goes on to state, and I quote, "The internet gives young people a voice, gives them access to political discourse, and has made them one of the most connected and worldly generations of all time." Mr. Speaker, it is for this reason parents give their give their children these smart devices, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask the Prime Minister and the Minister of Education why this country do not consider adopting legislation similar to the Jessica Rogan Act which was implemented in Ohio. An act which mandates all schools to take proactive, Mr. Speaker, I will repeat that, proactive, not reactive, but proactive anti-cyberbullying programs in all schools, Mr. Speaker. The act goes on to set out a clear course of action to be taken if cyberbullying occurs to ensure that it doesn't happen again. Mr. Speaker, as the member for Tunapuna stated, if it could work in the United States of America, why can't it work here in Trinidad and Tobago? Mr. Speaker, I personally have never been a victim of cyberbullying, but I have had friends who have, and I have seen the emotional toll that it takes on it, which is why I'm disappointed that the government will waste this House time to seek this half-thought-out amendment to legislation instead of working with this opposition to get the cybercrime bill passed, Mr. Speaker. Instead of bringing comprehensive anti-cyberbullying legislation, instead of bringing legislation which will mandate pornographic websites to put more robust age verification methods in place, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have heard today a long list of dangers posed by social media, ranging from sexual grooming to child pornography to access to the dark web and even recruitment by ISIS and white supremacists, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask the Minister of National Security, what has her ministry done to rectify these problems? As these problems are clearly not being addressed in this motion before said today. And I know the minister is going to say in the last budget her ministry has allocated $6.0044 billion. And that a percentage of that money will go towards fixing the problems. But Mr. Speaker, talk is cheap. And that is all the minister and the government has been doing for the past 4 years, talking and taking no real action to protect our nation's youth, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the government has failed in their various obligations under United Nations conventions to protect our nation's youth. And instead of accepting responsibility for that failure, because I heard the government speak about responsibility earlier on, but they clearly have none. Instead of accepting responsibility for this failure, they had the Minister of Public Administrations draft this motion with one sinister intent, to take the responsibility from themselves and place it on the already overburdened shoulders of our nation's parents, and then blame the parents, Mr. Speaker. But I am here today to tell the government that the opposition will not sit idly by and let this injustice occur. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to make my contribution today. Let me rest the member for Princess Townhead, because educational purposes for technology, yes, we know that, and of course I know that. But educational purposes is to go forward as a first world country. But the opposition has raised time factor as a problem. But if we are putting things right at your fingertips, then you have to make the time. Because therefore the children will go forward as a first world nation and the parents will remain at a third world level. Is that what the opposition wants? Anyways, I'll continue my contribution by stating, allow me to quote from the Child Act of Trinidad and Tobago, the National Child Act, chapter 46.1, page 35 to page 34, 45.1, talks about the provision for the safety of the children. It talks about the parents or guardian's responsibility for the child. Therefore, the parents have a legal duty and responsibility. Or is the opposition? You all don't know that, because it's right there in the National Act of Trinidad and Tobago. Maybe you should take a read. Anyhow, I'll continue to state, according to the OECD report, which are all first world countries, and you know we like to emulate first world countries. So today, we as the government of Trinidad and Tobago will emulate not policies, but legislation. And you'll see as I continue my contribution. The OECD report, which is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, page 13, states 3 broad categories that children face on a day-to-day basis online, some of which are pornography, cyber grooming, cyberbullying, and privacy and security risks. It goes on to state the seven sub-branches that parents highlight. The parents are the first to raise these issues, and the 7 sub-branches are all in coordination to the 3 broad branches. If the parents are raising these issues, the parents need to educate themselves, because we, the government, have already put things in place. But you all are not listening. The member for Superior said said earlier today about 79%. Now, I have to paraphrase because I cannot remember, but it's along these lines that parents were oblivious to when a situation happened in the school. If they were not oblivious and educated themselves, they would have taken back bonds with their children and they would have known what their children were up to.
Member, you may not. Member, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Children face issues such as depression from online. They face things as cyberbullying and cyber grooming. The parents need to educate themselves to educate the children of the pros and cons of social media, Mr. Speaker. I'll go on to state again in the National Child Act of Trinidad and Tobago, where it states, and I'm quoting, into whose care a child is placed under. This part, whilst the order is enforced, is the right to have control over the child and shall be responsible for his welfare. As Minister of Education, the welfare of children is my main focus, but maybe the opposition doesn't know what the word welfare means, so allow me to tell you. The word welfare talks about well-being, safety, protection, and interest of the child. The parents need to be held liable and accountable to make sure that their children's welfare is entirely met. According to a study done by the AAP, which is the American Academy of Pediatrics, this study says that children have a self-limited capacity for self-regulation and they are open and vulnerable to peer pressure and danger. In relation to the OECD report talks about where the internet can be a major channel for their education, creativity, and self-expression. And as I said, education and technology goes hand in hand. However, it also carries a spectrum of risks to which children are more vulnerable than adults. So if the parents know this, the parents know that the children's brain have not fully developed, why would they leave them open to these risks? The parents need to take control of this. Now, the member for Naparima and Oropuch and also member for my area, I'm going to read something that will put you at rest. With regard to social media usage, this amended provision will establish an official body governed by the Children's Authority known as the Social Media Ethics Committee, and the committee shall work with the Ministry of Education to incorporate into the curriculum a mandatory course of social media ethics. This course will be open to parents as well, and the time and days will be flexible to cater for single parents and parents who have a busy schedule. And again, if we are putting things right at your fingertips, you have to make the time. We are educating you. That's all we can do. And I'll leave with a question for the opposition. How do we expect to go forward as a first world country when the mindset of the parents remain at a third world level? And I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Talparo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to enter this assiduous debate. And I must thank my colleagues for all their contributions thus far, because they have fully enlightened me to the situation. But I must say, member for Arima just mentioned that the parents have a third world mentality, but I believe, Mr. Speaker, that the government has a third world mentality. Mr. Speaker, in my contribution, I proceed to rebut some of the statements made by my colleagues, as well as to offer some solutions. I believe that solutions are not on the table right now, Mr. Speaker, but the blame game is on the table, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the fingers are being pointed, but no solutions are being met, Mr. Speaker. I believe I offer some solutions. First of all, Mr. Speaker, I would like to rebut a statement made by the Minister of Rural and Local Government when he said social media is just a distraction. Social media is a necessity. Also rebutting one of the ministers who said it's not a necessity. It's a necessity, Mr. Speaker. We need social media. Social media offers socialization and communication, and to some extent, it offers a link between parents and children in a lot of different circumstances. I also want to rebut the leader of the House, who said and mentioned mobile ownership is said to be linked to aiding, abetting, and procurement and of criminal offenses, and you can be arrested. You can be arrested for aiding and abetting. But I believe that mobile ownership is not the main cause. It is constantly and redundantly being babbled by my fellow colleagues on the other side that ownership is a problem.
But the statistics have been thrown about, and we know that children can access social media without the ownership of mobile devices by the parent. I wish to ask my brilliant colleagues, brilliant colleagues, Mr. Speaker. If I am a parent and I did not purchase a phone or an electronic device that offers access, will I be liable if my child does malicious activity using a different device? How can I be liable? And another question I would like to pose, Mr. Speaker, is what are we doing to harmonize this legislation with international laws? Everybody has spoken about the need for legislation, but I must say, how does this legislation in this motion fully agree with the Convention of Rights that we sign on to and to other laws? If I, a cyberbully, I wish to illustrate, if I, as a cyberbully in, let's say, South Africa, right, Mr. Speaker, I bully somebody in Trinidad, how are we extraditing, or how are we going to deal with that bully? How are we going to find that bully? Do we have the capacity? I have done my research and my homework. I don't know if the government has, but while I was doing my homework, I realized that we in Trinidad and Tobago do not have the foundation to properly surveil and properly protect cyberspace. We only have one cybercrime unit, and we have no formal training for the officers to learn how to deal with cyber threats. We also, Mr. Speaker, have no formal mechanism for reporting cybercrimes. The citizens don't even know how to report the cybercrimes. So how would they support, how would they report a malicious activity of social media if there's no foundation? We can't build a house on no foundation, Mr. Speaker. I must also say, Mr. Speaker, that moving forward, I offer a solution. I think we should make a framework that outlines the rights and responsibility of users. I believe that we can unite and form a united front to deal with this problem. We are all intellectual beings. We are all hired to do, or I would say, might be hired to do the jobs in our positions. So I think we should come together as one to make a solution, Mr. Speaker. We can develop a policy, we could develop a framework that outlines what you have to do on social media, what is wrong and what is right, so parents as well as children will be aware. And talking about aware, that's my next point, Mr. Speaker, awareness. So far, these programs have been implemented in the past, I must say, but no awareness was raised. You are saying it's at the tip of our fingertips, but we can't reach for it because we're not hearing about it and we are not seeing it. Why you are not making us aware? I believe I must offer my marketing skills in business.
Time has expired.
Thank you.
Minister of Sports and Youth Affairs.
Member for Talparo, let me put your mind at ease because you clearly did not do your homework well enough. If you had done your homework, you would have realized that the TTPS is currently working on a social media surveillance to help with the crime system. Mr. Speaker, we are losing our nation's youth, Mr. Speaker, and why? All because of social media. We see issues such as suicide, child trafficking, and cyberbullying becoming more prominent in society. Now, we as a government are in grief and we want to put a stop to these issues, but I'm afraid we can't do it without families, Mr. Speaker. Families is the foundation of any country, and it is also the first social group that a child belongs to, Mr. Speaker. A survey was done on the conversation.com, Mr. Speaker, to find out how many parents actually monitor their children's social media activity. Only 5%, Mr. Speaker, monitor their children's social media activity. That's a whopping 95% of our nation's children using social media unsupervised. I mean, what could go wrong, right, Mr. Speaker? According to NVEE.org statistics, 13 countries was able to make a connection between suicide and cyberbullying. I'm not sure if my colleagues know about the famous Netflix series 13 Reasons Why. It's actually based on a true story. And the main character, Hannah Baker, inappropriate photos was taken of her while she was having innocent fun in the park, Mr. Speaker, and it was circulated online. This led to a series of depressing events for her, and it ended with her taking her life. But I paid special attention to the mother. She took the death really hard. She said because she knew something was off, she knew something was wrong, and she did not pursue it. Maybe if she had monitored her child's social media activity, she would have realized that her child was being cyberbullied, and just maybe, her child would have been alive today, Mr. Speaker. Now, why do predators target children, Mr. Speaker? Is it not because they are vulnerable and easily manipulated? So are they not the victims in this case, Mr. Speaker? Is the opposition suggesting that we punish a victim, Mr. Speaker? I don't know about them, but this is not how the court system of Trinidad and Tobago works. I'm also disappointed that my colleagues on the other side did not elaborate on issues such as child trafficking and sex predators. Who is to blame here? Who is to blame in these situations? Because the fact of the matter, Mr. Speaker, is it takes time to gain someone's trust, even a child's trust. So these criminals, they are having the persistence to come online every day to message your child. Good morning, good night. How was your day, Mr. Speaker? Some situations, they are spending more time with your child than you. And are you telling me that these parents are not noticing a change in their child's behavior? They're not noticing that their child is becoming more secretive or spending more time on the cell phone? Now, I can't speak for all, but I can speak for majority. And there is not much you can hide from a good parent, Mr. Speaker. They always find out. So these sex traffickers, these child traffickers are working hard. These sex predators are working hard. And parents have to work harder. Are they using the apps? Are they using joint emails? Are they attending parenting workshops in school? Are they using time constraints, Mr. Speaker? Because in situations like this, Mr. Speaker, parents are to blame. But that is not what we as a government are seeking to do. In fact, this brings me to my conclusion. The motion has been clearly misunderstood by the opposition. We do not seek to blame parents, but we seek to make them more involved in their child's life. Because we, as a government, Mr. Speaker, as a bench, we do not want to lose another youth. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Tabakit. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to enter this debate, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, can you imagine a state of affairs where when a child engages in activity deemed as wrong on social media, the parent or the guardian, not the child, has to be held accountable or fined some amount, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, this is the motion that the government is proposing to, and this speaks to the lack of understanding and action on the strategy that the government has in dealing with complex new technologies known as social media. Now, Mr. Speaker, let me lay down the foundation of some statistics for you. According to Tracy Hackshaw, the chairman of the Internet Society of Trinidad and Tobago chapter, 58% of our population, or 800,000 people currently within our society, are active on social media. According to the Central Statistical Office, 25% of our population are children, Mr. Speaker. When the arithmetic is done, assuming that 1 in every 2 children are using social media, that quantifies to an amount of 100,000 children active on social media. Mr. Speaker, with this great quantity of children, how can you just immediately place the liability on the parent when the parents have tried their best to educate their children, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, children are active on various social media networks such as Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. The children know right from wrong. They know that they should not be indulging in these heinous acts such as cyberbullying, child pornography. But are there cases where these things happen? Of course there are, but again I say that does not mean that the parents should be held accountable. I will say it again as well. Parents often try their best to educate their children on the advantages, the disadvantages of using social media. They often try to set guidelines for their children while they're using social media, Mr. Speaker, but at the end of it all, it's always going to be up to the child to make the right decision and do the right thing, Mr. Speaker. Now, Mr. Speaker, I've been sitting here disappointed, Mr. Speaker. I've been hearing members of the government, specifically the member of Tunapuna, say that, you know, there are legislation in place in states in America, such as Wisconsin or Georgia, that already has this legislation in place where when the child does something wrong on social media, the parent could be held accountable. But I would have her know, Mr. Speaker, this is the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. We have been an independent nation since August the 31st of 1962, Mr. Speaker. How we must not then resort to a monkey see, monkey do mentality that the Tunapuna is alluding to, Mr. Speaker. And it gets worse. The member of Tunapuna didn't even provide some speck of evidence to state that when the legislation in place in America, it improves the rate of child pornography or cyberbullying. Mr. Speaker, the government is clearly just talking the talk but not walking the walk. Mr. Speaker, also disappointed again. I've heard the Minister of Communication, the Attorney General, the Minister of Public Administration, and the Minister of Education state that for first-time offenders, for the parents who are charged once for their children while they're doing social media, state that they will be placed into these social media ethics courses, Mr. Speaker. But again, this does not make sense. Again, the government is failing to govern the country as it should be governed, Mr. Speaker. These social media ethics courses should be in place before the child does the wrong, so that the child and the parent can both go to the social media ethics course and educate themselves so that the cyberbullying and the child pornography can be prevented before it even starts. Mr. Speaker, as far as I know, the saying goes, prevention is better than cure, not cure is better than prevention. Mr. Speaker, you know, instead of placing the liability on the parent, the government should be taking note from the TTPSS, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. According to news posted on the Guardian newspaper website on the 8th of October, precisely 34 days ago, in 2020, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is going to create a center with the capacity to monitor and analyze social media activity via the use of surveillance systems. Mr. Speaker, this is what the government should be doing. They should be trying to understand the problems that social media poses instead of trying to place our nation's parents into disrepute and tarnish their records. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable, the Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, firstly, from the hindset, we would like to say that this motion is forward thinking, Mr. Speaker. This motion is parent-oriented, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, however, I am deeply saddened that the opposition has taken an emotional and irrational approach to the motion that the government has proposed today, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this motion continues to transgress into the Children Act of Trinidad and Tobago, what UNICEF and the UN mandates for Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you know, the member of Princess Town asked me a question, so I'll address it here. He asked, why didn't I adopt the Jessica Logan law? Mr. Speaker, I would like to bring to his attention today that the cybercrime bill that is before the House of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago deals exactly to what he wants to implement. So clearly, he is and confused with what we are presenting here today, Mr. Speaker. No, member, I know I will answer your question, so please. Firstly, Mr. Speaker, the government understands that a family has an essential role to play with regards to children, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, under the Children Act 46-161, it states, Mr. Speaker, that if a parent cannot control a child, Mr. Speaker, then therefore the court can reprimand that child and take the child away. And that, it seems, that the government is not aware of that. But today I would like to inform, and that is what the law of today is stating, which is the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago. This government amendment proposes that social media now be included within the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago to hold parents accountable and responsible, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, furthermore, it shows that this government is progressing forward, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, because through UNICEF and the United Nations, the United Nations calls upon the government to implement legislation that takes care of the children of our nation. And with regards to taking care of the children of our nation, not one member spoke about it, is that within Trinidad and Tobago, children are not allowed to use cell phones within the school population. And if, Mr. Speaker, that they are not using cell phones in the schools, then clearly they are using it at home because they can't use it on our school campus. Mr. Speaker, UNICEF also mandated that parents practice good techniques, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, members spoke about time management, that parents lack time management. Mr. Speaker, when parents sign up for this parenting job, they took an oath to ensure that they manage their time properly to ensure the care for our nation's youth, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, these techniques include setting limits, setting boundaries, and establishing good parental values within the youth of our nation. Mr. Speaker, to go on, this motion, Mr. Speaker, is important because it is proactive and it is a continuation to the step-by-step approach that this government is about to take. Because you see, in 2017, Princess Town, listen to this. In 2017, we proposed and we brought back the bill for cybercrime. That was one step towards this motion. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance in his 2020 budgetary report spoke about a 25 million plan that he has to implement where social media coverage is regards where TTPS is responsible for, and they would now manage social media and observe social media actions on our nation's youth. Mr. Speaker, so just to tie all these things back in, this motion is just another step in the right direction that the government continues to propel our nation's youth forward, Mr. Speaker, members opposite, the opposition leaders stood and responded to the motion and did nothing for us today, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I would like to inform the members opposite that all of you all need to caucus, Mr. Speaker, and become proactive with your decision, because some of you all want policies, some of you all want apps, but we are presenting a legislation, so you all need to be on the same page, because this government is on the same page. Mr. Speaker, and as I close, I would like to say, this is a government that goes forward and transgresses forward. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Point Up here.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to enter this debate. Japanese culture, according to the article Living National Treasures by David Coulter, shows that senior citizens are treated as national treasures. I say, our youths are our young, developing national treasures. Mr. Speaker, I must say, it is flattering that the Minister of Works and Transport would like to sort me out outside of the stipulated time. But let me assure you, Minister, I am fully aware of where I stand. And you said, due to the difference in thinking between a child and an adult, children can't make good decisions. Is the government implying that youths are incapable? Then who and why did our exceptional nation choose to host a National Youth Parliament for the 17th year? And if this is your opinion, then we shouldn't take any of your points into consideration. May I also add to the Honorable Prime Minister that the cybercrime bill is not before the House of Representatives, but is before a joint select committee. If, as a nation, we are truly concerned for our youth, we'll stop diverting from their development and forsake the futile efforts of perpetuating the ideologies of holding a parent or guardian to account under this proposed legislation. Instead, we'll focus on developing responsibilities. Responsibilities developed, it's a process. We should instead put emphasis on the child and hold them to account through reasonable measures, such as community service and technology responsibility seminars. No, I may not. I have plenty ground to cover for their development, and start acting as guardians of our nation instead of trying to label our youth under their parents as control measures. In an article, Teenage Years, by the Bartleby Research webpage, teenage is an evolutionary as well as a revolutionary period of one's life. It is a time when one goes through the worst so as to reach out to the best. if we are only to punish the providers and not invest into the development of the youths of our beloved Trinidad and Tobago, criminals will be produced who took advantage of their parents' role under this legislation and learn nothing about accountability. Pay attention to this carefully. Together we aspire, together we achieve our national motto, Mr. Speaker. Instead of distancing ourselves from the parents and guardians of our country, we should step into the country's heartbeat and develop our youths befitting of future leaders. Mr. Speaker, if we are to move forward with this debate rationally, we need to remove the destructive intention of holding a provider liable, but much rather focus on a solution that would be economically beneficial, socially just, and nationally viable, instead of spending our resources on who to point the finger at. Are we aware of the level of destruction? No, I'm not. I have plenty ground to cover. I repeat myself. Are we aware of the level of destruction this motion will inflict on all parties concerned? I fail to understand how the government can have the audacity to propose such a motion to disrupt families. Will children of our beloved country be developed or destroyed, knowing that they are responsible for their parents suffering penalties due to their inappropriate actions?
Honorable members, when calling a standing order, you are to rise and present your standing order to the House. Thank you. Member, you may continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was moving just fine. Will this additional stress on guardians now inflict pressure into the homes of our country instead of love and support, pushing children further away and into undesirable hands? Furthermore, will holding parents to account really solve the problem? Mr. Speaker.
Standing order 44.
Member, please refrain from reading from your contribution excessively. You may continue.
Mr. Speaker, I was just about to draw a reference, but I may do it anyhow. According to the American Psychological Association, they state that the psychology research and practice has certainly demonstrated the importance of the parent-child relationship. But due to time, I'll skip to it, and their main concern is that it is uncertain that punishing the parents would have the intended effect of reducing juvenile crime. Mr. Speaker, as I close, I would like to pay careful attention to this. If we are to bring alive the vision of our father of the nation, Dr. Eric Williams, that children hold the future of our nation, I suggest we surpass the mediocre level of inculpating and start investing more into our nation's youth development as leaders, the nation's builders. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister of National Security.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to make my contribution. As we are coming to the end of this debate here today, I will not raise any new points, but in fact, I will highlight some concerning things that was mentioned here today. Members, the member for Komuto, and I quote, said that the cybercrime bill is an absurd proposal. Yet still, the member for Princestown stood and asked why we, the government, do not work with the opposition to pass the bill. I'd like to ask, which is it? Maybe y'all should spend a little less time pointing fingers and bashing and meet together to discuss where y'all are really standing on the matter. And I'm ecstatic that the members of the opposition highlighted initiatives taken by the TTPS along with my ministry to implement surveillance systems. But however, it's occurred to me that some of your members are still unaware. The member for Talparu, you asked, how do the members of the public know where to report cybercrimes? Maybe you have not done your homework. The TTPS has had a special unit known as the Cybercrime Unit, a unit specifically designed for the investigation of cybercrimes, a unit that dedicates its time to lecturing and educating the members of Trinidad and Tobago on how to properly handle incidents of cybercrime. Now, members, if we want, we can take a moment to humor the opposition's claims, which suggest that parents are unaware of the world of social media. But, Mr. Speaker, I must make it known that this is an assumption. Are we really going to hinder the passing of a motion here today based off of an assumption? And if they are not familiar, as a parent, would you not want to educate yourself on something that is clearly playing a prominent role in the life of your child? I think they would want to. Members of this House, we need modern solutions for modern problems, and it seems as though the government is the only side that is thinking like this. We, the government, with our proposed amendments, are not saying that parents must be punished for the behavior of children on social media. But what we are saying is that they should be held accountable when they fail their parental duties. With reference to Section 1A of the proposed amendments, which speaks to parental duties and diligence in supervision, that is, so when we stand here and we debate in favor of a motion or pass a proposed legislation, that the parents take it upon themselves to make sure that their children fall in line. As a result of failure on not only the part of the parents, but also of the child, depending on the extent of the violation, they must both then face the consequence as put forward by this government here today. And as the Minister of National Security, I could stand and give my word that thorough investigations will be conducted. The member for Princestown, it seems as though you're still very much excited to bash my ministry. Well, I must let you know, you said that talk is cheap, but my words are expensive. And as a woman of integrity, I must let you know that I am like no other Minister of National Security this room has ever seen before. I will do everything in my power to ensure the safety and security of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Now, members, we can stand here and we can debate back and forth. We can throw around statistics and quotes in length, but that does not discern from the fact that a parent will always be a parent. A parent's duty is never complete, no matter how mature a child is or how mature they think they are. I thank you.
Minister of Public Administration.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to respond to issues raised by the Leader of the Opposition. In your contribution, you would have spoken to the fact that at the age of 7, children are presumed to have a natural ability to reason. But as the Minister of Works and Transport rightfully said, based on psychological research, it is evident that people under the age of 25 have a predilection to reason with the amygdala, which is responsible for both impulse and emotions. I ask the question to you then, Honorable Member, can a child exercise proper reasoning? Now, I want to make it clear to the House that while social media is inherently a good tool, it must be remembered that social media does have the ability to be weaponized. And if a child commits murder, as stated by the Minister for CARICOM, with a gun that is at home, the parent is to be held liable, the gun being the weapon. In this case, why shouldn't the same reasoning therefore apply, where social media can be utilized as a weapon to cause cyberbullying of another person to the point that they take their own life? Now, to the member for Chaguanas West, as well as some of the other members on the side of the opposition, you would have all extensively quoted the National Parenting Policy of Trinidad and Tobago, page 8. But it seems that you have skipped over the words specifically in it that speak to the creation of a safe and secure environment. Where a parent fails to do this, i.e. create a safe and secure environment, have they truly exercised their role? The purpose of this motion is to put pressure on parents to, in fact, ensure that a safe and secure environment exists when their children engage on social media. Now, in addition to that, you would have spoken on the same motion, speaking about the fact that there's a need for universal morals to be taught. Now, I would like to contend that in this 21st century, proper usage of social media and the internet should be considered a universal moral. Now, some members also raised the issue that parents can't monitor children 24/7. Well, the government has recognized this, which is why in the 2019-2020 fiscal year budget, $6.044 billion was allotted to the Ministry of National Security, a percentage of which will go to the Public Investment Service Plan, which will establish a center with the capacity to monitor and analyze social media activity with surveillance equipment under the TTPS. This means that we are assisting parents in ensuring that children's actions are monitored on social media. Now, for the member for Tabakis, you would have quoted this and you would have told the government that we should take example from the TTPS. It's my honor to inform you that the TTPS is a part of the government of Trinidad and Tobago. So we will surely continue to take example from the good work that we are doing. Now, to the member for To the member for Barataria, you would have spoken to internet cafes and school computers, and that it would be more feasible, therefore, to educate. Now, I would like to inform you that in the proposed amendment to the Children Act, there's an entire provision that deals with education of children and the proper and responsible usage of social media. Now, what a lot of the members on the opposition seem to have missed is that we are not fully absolving children of their liability for engaging in criminal activity on social media platforms. Rather, what the proposed amendment states, and I quote, where the child is under the age of 16, 16 being the middle ground between 7, member for Siparia, and Shogunas East 25, parents and guardians of the child can be held liable by the court for the actions of the child, whereby the parent or guardian has failed to exercise due diligence in the supervision of the child and his or her online presence. We are not merely saying that all parents, it is where the parent fails to exercise that due diligence. Now, several members would have also made reference to the fact that we need to implement programs. And you would have rightly quoted that at the first instance, the court has the ability to instruct children to go to a mandatory social media course. Yes, that is true. But at the same time, you would have also raised issues with the fact that there's proposed sentencing and that there are proposed fines. But it must be realized that the court, in dealing with single mothers, disabled parents, and all the other vulnerable minority groups you have raised, have the discretion to listen to the extrinsic factors, which means that the court will make a ruling based on how they seem fit. So maybe the opposition should read up on the separation of powers a little bit before they come and present facts that we are instructing the court on how to do their job. Now, member for Mayaro, you would have indicated that ignorance of the law is not a defense, as I would have stated in my presentation this morning. And whilst we understand that, we have still gone the extra mile to create a provision that speaks to the fact that parents can be educated through a host of programs, even in the first instance and commission of the offense. Now, one of the members raised the issue that there is no framework in place to report cybercrime. I believe it was the member for Talparo. Now, member, let me educate you a little bit. When a crime takes place, you could go to the police station, you could call the 800 TIPS hotline, and since the opposition seems to love apps so much because you all spent a lengthy time discussing it, the TTPS recently launched an app where you could report crimes. Now, members, I don't want to spend too much time debating on who is right and who is wrong, because at the core of this motion is the safety and the security of children. And that is our priority as a government, and that should be our priority as a House of Representatives. Now, members, you would have spoken to international law obligations. Let me remind you that Article 19(1) of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child speaks explicitly to the fact that both states, i.e. the government, and the legislative authority, that being this august chamber, have a responsibility to pass legislation in the best interest of the child when they are in the care of parents and guardians, which is what this motion does in fact speak to. Now, the member for Tabakit would have also given statistics speaking about the fact that there are 100,000 children who are vulnerable. Well, don't you think if 100,000 children are vulnerable, that something should be done to protect them from being vulnerable? Now, members, in going off the thread that this motion seeks to focus on children, I would like to bring an issue to the forefront of the House, because it's always easy for us to stand and debate and to throw comments at one another and to talk freely. But we have to remember that the actions that this Parliament takes affect people, real-life citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, which is why I would like to draw reference to the 2011 suicide of George Kazajan, a student of St. Mary's College, who committed suicide after he was cyberbullied by peers at his institution for his sexual orientation. That is one less youth who had a bright and promising future to build this country into a better place. Because the Parliament, and by extension members who would continue to debate against an act like this, a proposed amendment like this, my apologies, would say that it is not relevant or that it is frivolous. At the end of the day, the lives of our children matter. The future of Trinidad and Tobago matter. And I would like to end on reference to what the Attorney General would have spoken to. At some time, we have to stand and we have to protect the interests of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago and not make it political but do the right thing. It is not time to play politics or to play politricks, as I would like to say. It is time to put nation first, to put the people of Trinidad and Tobago first, and to put the children, and by extension, the future and sustainability of this great nation at the forefront. Thank you. With that in mind, Mr. Speaker, I beg to...
Honorable members, the question is, be it resolved that this youth parliament consider adopting legislation to recognize parents and guardians' liability for their children's online behavior and hold them to account. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? No. The clerk will now take a division.
Ms. Hussain.
Aye.
Mr. John.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
Mr. Ali.
Yes.
Mr. Gomez.
Aye.
Ms. Bailey.
Aye.
Mr. Bruce.
Aye.
Ms. Sakal.
Yes.
My apologies. Ms. Gosain.
Aye.
Ms. Modest.
Yes.
Ms. Prasad.
Yes.
Ms. Ramsaran.
Aye.
Ms. David.
Aye.
Ms. Sigobin.
Aye.
Mr. Narayan.
Aye.
Mr. Manju.
Aye.
Ms. Bechan.
Aye.
Ms. Lachman.
Aye.
Ms. Stewart.
Aye.
Mr. Trim.
Aye.
Ms. Gaspard.
Aye.
Ms. Mayhew.
Aye.
Mr. Motilal.
No.
Mr. Stout.
No.
Ms. Adams.
No.
Mr. Gomes.
No.
Ms. Lachman.
No.
Ms. Ramprasad.
No.
Ms. Jeffers.
Nay.
Ms. Gaidin.
No.
Ms. Henry.
No.
Ms. Lutu.
No.
Ms. DePesa.
No.
Mr. Piper. Ms. Lam Monroe.
No.
Mr. Fleury.
No.
Ms. Boudram.
No.
Mr. Oliver.
No.
Ms. Bartholomew.
No.
Ms. Kraft.
No.
Ms. Janki.
No.
Mr. Shara Prasad.
No.
Mr. Speaker, the result of the division is 22 members voted for, 20 members voted against, there were no abstentions.
Honorable members, the result of the division is 22 members voted for, 20 members voted against. There was no abstentions. The motion has been approved. Leader of the House.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this House do now adjourn to a date to be fixed.
Honorable members, before I put the question, allow me to express appreciation on behalf of all members of this Youth Parliament to the Trinidad and Tobago branch of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, the CPA, and the Parliament, in particular, the Planning Committee, of the Office of the Parliament, which organized this 17th sitting of the National Youth Parliament. Today's debate focused on should parents be held accountable for their children's social media activities. We, the members of this 17th National Youth Parliament, trust that the concerns raised and the proposals made during the debate will provide those in authority with a youth perspective on this issue. We wish to express our deepest gratitude to all officials who accepted our invitation and graced us with their presence. To our schools and institutions for selecting us, our family and relatives who exercised patience and assisted us in preparing for the debate, we thank you. During our intense weeks of tutoring, we were trained by Ms. Catherine Gordon, who coached us on dress, etiquette, and civility. Minister of Agriculture, Land, and Fisheries, Senator the Honorable Clarence Rambarat, Senator Wade Mark, and Minister in the Ministry of the Attorney General, Mr. Fitzgerald Hines, who taught us developing debating skills. The staff of the Office of the Parliament, who taught us oratory skills and provided us with the necessary tools to build on our debating techniques, use of standing orders, and gender sensitivity. And the former youth parliamentarians, Mr. Kemuel Pascal, Mr. Thay Alexander, and Ms. Shanta Siposad, who provided mentorship and tips to aid in making our contributions at today's debate a success. Mention must also be made of the coordinating team of the Parliament, who contributed in varying measures to the successful execution of this event. They provided guidance on how we should utilize all of the skills we learned in our debate earlier today, and to them I say a special thank you. To the National Infrastructure Development Company Limited, NIDCO, and its agencies, the Water Taxi Service, and the staff of the Marshal's Office of the Parliament for the provision of transportation, we say a heartfelt thank you. It was truly a distinguished privilege to have participated in this annual debate. May I now kindly ask that you remain seated after the adjournment for a brief award ceremony. Thank you. Honorable members, the question is that this House do now adjourn to a date to be fixed. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? I think the ayes have it. This House now stands adjourned to a date to be fixed.
President of the Senate, Senator the Honorable Christine Kangaloo. Speaker of the House, the Honorable Bridget Anisette George. The Vice President of the Senate, Senator Nigel De Freitas. Members of Parliament from the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago and from the National Assembly of the British Virgin Islands. Our youth parliamentarians, parents and teachers seated in the public gallery, members of the media, members of Parliament staff, specially invited guests, good afternoon. Yes, very good. My name is Atiba Wilshire, and I've been tasked with being the Master of Ceremonies for this afternoon's proceedings. It's been a very interesting, thought-provoking and educational 17th National Youth Parliamentary Debate. I must say that I too was educated. It was very interesting to see the points that were brought forth. And it's a very, very ticklish and very interesting subject about whether or not parents should bear some liability for their children's social media and online activities. But I would like to give you all a heartfelt thank you and congratulations for the work that you all have put in, not only today, but over the past couple weeks. Give yourselves a... So we begin the proceedings. I would like to invite to the podium to give some congratulatory remarks the President of the Senate, Senator the Honorable Christine Kangaloo.
Thank you very much, Master of Ceremonies. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Honorable Bridget Anisette George. We are graced here today with the presence of a delegation from the Parliament of the British Virgin Islands. So the Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Honorable Julian Willock, the Honorable Shari De Castro, MP, Junior Minister for Trade and Economic Development, and the Honorable Melvin M. Turnbull. Specially invited guests, we have observers from Parliamericas and the Caribbean Institute for Women in Leadership, members of the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, our teachers, parents, other students, staff of the Office of the Parliament, and just in case you all didn't realize that you all were incorporated in students, let me just say our very outstanding debaters present here today. So it is my pleasure to begin this part of the proceedings by congratulating all 47 participants in this, our 17th National Youth Parliament. And on behalf of Madam Speaker and on my own behalf, I want to say to you, well done. And you need to give yourself a round of applause. You really have, over the 6 weeks of preparation, you have sacrificed a lot. You have, I'm sure you have given up your extracurricular activities to devote your time and energy to preparing for this debate. And I want to say to you, we are very grateful. The Parliament, we in the Parliament are grateful for your efforts. And I'm sure that those who have been looking on and listening to the proceedings today would have been very impressed with what they heard, and therefore your sacrifices were not in vain. May I also say part of that sacrifice was also about the distance you had to come. So thank you for taking part, for dedicating yourself to the exercise, and for bringing all of your passion that you brought today to this chamber. We have, I think I heard someone talk about the Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries. He was one of the persons who participated in training, in some of the training sessions, and he was a youth parliamentarian many, many years ago. And so I just want to say to you, as you participated in this exercise, to look forward, and maybe this, your participation here something has come alive in you, and this may very well be where you will be making presentations in the future. So let's talk about the topic we debated. Should parents be held accountable for their children's social media activities? And I must tell you that the arguments for saying parents should be accountable and against were very persuasive. And all of you brought a kind of passion to your arguments and to your presentations. And I don't know if you remember, but I sat in on one of your training sessions. And I want to say to you that what I saw at that training session and what I saw today was a vast improvement. And I saw that a lot of you came and you gave your personal experiences with the issue. The Minister of Finance, I think, you talked about being the subject of bullying. You talked about what happened and what the effects it had on you. I think the member for Cypria spoke about that as well, about an incident. So you brought that, you brought anecdotal evidence to support what you were arguing for and against. Some of you, I noticed, as the Minister of CARICOM and Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, I noticed that you sought to align your contribution to your portfolio, as did the Minister of Finance. Very, very well done. And I'm singling out some, but it does not mean I did not hear what everybody had to present. But some of those, it really stood out that you were taking the time to identify with the portfolio you were given. All of you all came and you didn't just recite facts. You put it in a personal context. Member for Princestown, passion. Passion, and then as you stand there as someone of the political framework, you also talked about the subject, but then you translated it into the politics and what so. Very, very well done, all of you. I heard also, I want to commend you on how well researched you researched that topic. So I heard and we learned sitting there, we learned about the Nebraska study. We learned more about the national parenting policy. We learned about the debate, and you all went into it about nature versus nurture. I mean, you really went into the topic and you brought, and I thought there was a sincerity when you made your presentations. So once again, I want to thank you for that passion, for that level of preparation that you brought to the debate today. And I am saying, from my point of view, that this was one of the best youth parliaments that I have ever experienced. We introduced there was a little innovation on the part of the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago this year with the debate, in that we had votes coming in for the best debater. And we were receiving those votes online. And so far we've gotten 2,039 persons voting. I am not going to tell you what are the results of the votes. That's to come in a little while. But it just leaves me now to congratulate everyone, to say well done, and to say that I look forward. I will remember this day. I will remember the presentations, and maybe 5-10 years from now, or a little further on, I will be looking on and saying, I remember when that Attorney General spoke in the National Youth Parliament. So congratulations, everyone.
Thank you very much, Madam President. And may I also join with Madam President in adding my 2 cents and saying that this really was one of the best National Youth Parliamentary debates that we have had. Yeah? Good. We have now come to the distribution of tokens to all of those who participated. And since you all are so well dressed and groomed and so on, and I may not be as well dressed and groomed as you all are, I will step out of the eye of the camera and come over onto this side. Yeah. Hope Madam Deputy Speaker isn't too uncomfortable by my presence. And I will begin the calling of the names of the persons who we would like to come up and receive their tokens. To start off the giving and the awarding of the tokens, I would like to call Madam President back to center stage. And we begin with Khaled Toussaint. He was the Speaker of the House.
Very well. May I just say something? I forgot to say this. I just want to say that the Speaker of the House was impressive. I noticed that he had to rule on how to invoke a standing order. Yeah, and he also had to rule when standing orders were invoked, and he did it very, very easily and without buffing too much. So, well done.
Mr. Speaker must attend a very dignified school. And we continue. We continue with Ms. Sumaya Hussain. She was the Leader of the House and Minister of Planning and Development and member for Aruka Maloney. Mr. Shane John, the Prime Minister, Member of Parliament for Diego Martin West.
It was the Prime Minister who had to learn how to invoke the standing
And may I backtrack a bit just to add that Sumaya attends the Waterloo Secondary School. Shane John and Khalid Toussaint are students of Queen's Royal College. We continue with Malik Wilson, the Attorney General, Member of Parliament for San Fernando West, and student of St. Mary's College. Mr. Kaleem Ali, Minister of Public Administration, Member of Parliament for Port of Spain South, and he's a student of the University of the West Indies.
So I understand this young gentleman is studying law, and I want to see that he's mastered the art of arguing, because he did very well in presenting motion and in responding to all of the presentations as he wound up. So congratulations.
Mr. David Gomez, Minister of Finance, Member of Parliament for Diego Martin Northeast, and a student of the University of the Southern Caribbean. Ms. Chelsea Bailey, the Minister of National Security, Member of Parliament for Port of Spain North, and a student of the St. Francois Girls College. Mr. Jonathan Bruce, Minister of Works and Transport, and Member of Parliament for Laventille West.
nature versus nature.
Suresh Sakal, Minister of Health, member for St. Joseph, and a student of the Shiva Boys Hindu College. Giovanna Hussain, Minister of Education, member for ARIMA, and a student of the University of Trinidad and Tobago. At this time, we say thank you, Madam President. And we would like to call next the Speaker of the House, the Honorable Bridget Anisette George, to continue. And we continue with Michaela Modest, the Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs, member for Tobago West, and a student of the Providence Girls Catholic School. Dana Passad, the Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, member for St. Anne's West, and a student of the Lakshmi Girls Hindu College. Annalisa Ramsaran, Deputy Speaker, member for Tunapuna, and a student of the University of the West Indies. Carissa David, Minister of Trade and Industry, member of Parliament for Moruga, and a student of the St. Joseph's Convent in San Fernando. Ria Sigobin, Minister of Housing and Urban Development, member for Point Fortin, and a student of the Cohen Hamilton Secondary School. Terence Narain, Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, member for Labre, and a student of the Airi High School. Joshua Manju, Minister of Rural Development and Local Government, member for Toko Sangre Grande, and a student of the Astra Boys College in San Fernando. Amisha Bechan, Minister of Communications, member for La Hopita, and a student of the Hoover East Secondary School. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. At this time, we would like to call on the Honorable Julian Willock, MP, the Speaker of the National Assembly of the British Virgin Islands. And we continue with Cheyenne Lutchman, Minister of Tourism, Member of Parliament for San Fernando East, and a student of the Astra Girls College in Charleville. Onella Medina Stewart, Minister of Community Development, Culture and the Arts, Member for St. Anne's East, and a student of the Northeastern College. Teal Trim, Minister of Labour and Small Enterprise Development, member for Diego Martin Central, and a student of the Faizabad Anglican Secondary School. Camelia Gaspard, Minister of Public Utilities, member for Dabney O'Meara, and a student of the St. George's College. Amber Mayhew, Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, member for Tobago East, and a student of the Goodwood Secondary School. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And as we go over to the distribution of tokens for the members of the opposition, I would like to call on the Vice President of the Senate, Senator Nigel De Freitas. And we begin with Sudarshan Motilal, Opposition Chief Whip, member for Pointe-à-Pierre, and a student of the Shiva Boys Hindu College. Judel Stout, Leader of the Opposition, member for Siparia, and a student of the Presentation College in San Fernando. Abigail Adams, opposition member for Naparima and a student of the Sixth Form Government School Polytechnic Institute. Nathaniel Gomes, opposition member for Tabakit and a student of the St. Mary's College. Sharice Lakshman, opposition member, member for Chagonas East, and a student of the Couva East Secondary School. Chanel Rampasad, opposition member for Caroni Central, and a student of the Cohen Hamilton Secondary School. And we continue with Liddell Jeffers, opposition member for Oropuch East and a student of the Goodwood Secondary School. Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President. At this time, we would like to call on the Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, Senator the Honorable Clarence Rambarat. We continue with Rebecca Marie Gayadine, opposition member for Kumuto Manzanilla, a student of the Waterloo Secondary School. Chevelle Henry, opposition member for Caroni East, and a student of the Ayiri High School. Teja Lutu, opposition member for Couva South and a student of the Providence Girls Catholic School. Twasi DePisa, opposition member for St. Augustine, a student of the St. Joseph's Convent in San Fernando. Brent Piper, opposition member for Talparo, and a student of the Presentation College in San Fernando. Thank you very much, Minister. Now we would like to call on Independent Senator Hazel Thompson Ayi to continue the presentation of tokens. Camille Lam Monroe, opposition member for Barataria and a student of the St. Francois Girls College. Khalid Fleury, opposition member for Princestown and a student of the Astra Boys College in San Fernando. Camelia Boudram, opposition member for Faizabad and a student of the Northeastern College. Ishmael Olivier, opposition member for Mayaro and a student from the Toko Secondary School. Okay. Thank you very much, Senator Thompson Ayi. At this time, we would like to call on our second visitor from the British Virgin Islands, and that would be the Honorable Cherie B. De Castro. She is the Junior Minister of Trade and Economic Development. And we continue with Aliyah Bartholomew, opposition member for Couva North, and a student of the University of Trinidad and Tobago. Cheyenne Kreft, opposition member for Chaguanas West and a student of the St. George's College. Renata Janki, opposition member for San Juan, a student of the Astra Girls College in Charleville. Joel Shada Passad, opposition member for Lopino, and a student of the Faizabad Anglican Secondary School. Thank you very much, Ms. De Castro. At this time, we would like to call on Government Senator Avinash Singh to continue. And Senator Singh will begin the distribution of tokens to persons who fill staff positions during today's National Youth Parliamentary Debate. So we call on Lilia Alexander. She was the Clerk of the House, and she's a student of the El Socorro Regional Life Center. Next, Alexis Lord, the Assistant Clerk of the House, and a student of Queen's Royal College. Mohammed Gopichan, Mohammed was our marshal, and and Javier Katwaru, he was a parliamentary attendant and a student of Queen's Royal College. Thank you very much, Senator Singh. Now that we have completed the distribution of tokens to each and every one of our distinguished youth parliamentarians, we have come to the portion of the day's proceedings where we are about to give the announcement. We are about to give the announcement of the most outstanding debater. Now, you all would have noticed that there were 3 persons seated over in the media gallery to my left who would have been paying extra close attention to you all. Those were our judges, and they would have been assessing you based on certain criteria. And they have decided who they would like to be, or who they have chosen to be the best debater for today. So to give some remarks on the criteria and so on for the decision of who's going to be the best debater, I would like to invite to speak to you all Independent Senator Paul Richards.
Good afternoon, everyone. Senator the Honorable Christine Kangaloo, President of the Senate, the Honorable Brent Pritchett and Sir George, Speaker of the House of Representatives, our colleagues from the British Virgin Islands, my parliamentary colleagues in Trinidad and Tobago, parents, well-wishers, teachers, and debaters. Well, give yourselves a round of applause. It's my distinct honor to represent the judges, the 2 ladies who were there with me, who are fully responsible for the results. Disclosure. I'm just here to read the rules. So I pull up myself like a true politician one time, right? I just want to congratulate you all. You have been excellent. You've displayed to me what is the essence of the spirit and the beauty of Trinidad and Tobago. Very often, I'm a member of the media, and we don't focus enough on you, on the shining lights of Trinidad and Tobago. So give yourselves a round of applause. You have shown that Trinidad and Tobago is in great hands. And I want you to give your parents and teachers and support system a round of applause. So, the two ladies who are responsible for the results are the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Communication, Nataki Atiba Dilchan. Give her a round of applause, please. And also the Senior HR Manager of the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, Jacqueline Phillips Stout. So they are solely responsible for the results. I was just here to bring them water and bring the results to the Parliament staff. And I want you to give the Parliament staff a round of applause for the support they gave to us. And there's one person who I really want to acknowledge. I think all of you did fantastic. Your ability to do research, your ability to synthesize the material, put your personalities in it, which was very, very important. I'll tell you, I have been here for 4 years by the grace of God, and you'll have done better than me in the 4 years that I've been here. So, but there's one person who I thought embodied the position, and that is the Speaker of the House. I think his calm and temperance and deliberate, you know, he was very, very, very measured. He kept his cool. There was one thing I was waiting from him. Members, I'm on my legs, members. I'm on my legs. But he was very, very good. So what I'm going to do is give you the judging criteria by which we are adjudicated to these proceedings. And I think it was very, very difficult because you all did so well. The points were very, very close. And it's very difficult to separate sometimes one person from the other person. It came down to very, very minute details. Generally, it was the rebuttal skills. And I'll give you the criteria now. There are three main categories. One, or A, debating skill technique, which is 40 points, which included 1, organization of issues, 20 points, the use of rebuttal or ability to rebut, 10 points, compliance with parliamentary practice and procedure, adherence and knowledge of standing orders, also 10 points. Category B, accuracy and relevance, 30 points in all. Whether the information is well researched and supported by appropriate sources, 15 points. Relevance of information to the topic and your ability to tie the information to the topic, 15 points. And category C, the presentation and delivery of the information, which is where you bring your personality and your comfort level, which in most cases you were very, very good. 1, tone, 5 points. 2, diction, 5 points. 3, clarity of expression, 5 points. 4, general deportment, 5 points. And 5, which I think is a very important part of it, charisma, which is the ability of the person to capture and hold the interest of the audience, 10 points. And before I leave, I want to say I learned a few things for tomorrow's debate, because I'm due back here tomorrow. I learned how to interrupt very well and strategically from the Prime Minister. So, once again, congratulations to you all and continued success to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, our Chief Judge, Senator Paul Richards. Take a little time to allow some movement. Yeah. Very well. You all are ready? Yeah? Okay. So we are going to announce, we will not be announcing the exact points, but we are going to announce the top 3 debaters. Are you all nervous? I see some fanning, some waiting with bated breath, and so on and so on. All right, we're going to announce the top 3 debaters. I would like to ask for the announcement of the 3rd and 2nd place debaters. I'd like to ask if Madam Speaker could come to just shake. Okay, with Madam President. Yeah.
Drum roll, please. So in 3rd place, Member of Parliament for St. Anne's West, Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, Christina In 2nd place, Member of Parliament for Princestown, I kind of want to finish. So Member of Parliament for Princestown, representing Astra Boys College from San Fernando, Mr. Khalid Fleury. I like this. So in 1st place, the Member of Parliament for Tunapuna and the Deputy Speaker. So congratulations once again.
Congratulations to each of you. Now we are going to announce the People's Choice. Now, as Madam President had said earlier, for the first time in the history of hosting the National Youth Parliamentary Debate, for this debate, we introduced online voting, where members of the public, persons on the outside, could vote through our social media platforms to choose who they would have liked to be the people's choice out of this debate. So far, we have received over 2,200 votes. So I think that, to give the announcement of the People's Choice for the 17th National Youth Parliament, Trinidad and Tobago, I would like to invite the Speaker of the House, the Honorable Bridget Anisette George.
Thank you very much. And you all mightn't watch this show. This is the only show I watch on television. And it's Dancing with the Stars. And I always like to see the people's choice. Okay, so I have the honor to announce the person whom the people out there, 2,256 people voted. I think we should give them a round of applause. Okay, and the winner is, and I just want, just before I say that, a birthday bubble. You can't take it. I thought that's what you used to do with People's Choice. Keep it in. Okay. All right. Okay. So we do what you want. So the winner of the People's Choice is the member for San Fernando West, the Attorney General. So this is Malik Wilson. So while I'm here, and in the spirit of not keeping people waiting much longer, okay, to the Honorable Christine Kangaloo, President of the Senate of the Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Senator Nigel De Freitas, the Vice President of the Senate, members of Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, members of the Executive Committee of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, members of our visiting delegation of the British Virgin Islands, and Speaker Wilcox, and MPs De Castro and Turnbull, observers from Parliamericas and the Caribbean Institute of Women in Leadership, the youth parliamentarians of the 17th National Youth Parliament, distinguished judges, and Senator Richards, I'm not including you since all you did was to bring the remark. Parents and teachers, members of the media, specially invited guests, our online and listening public, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is my pleasant duty to express thanks for today's proceedings. This is the 17th Youth Parliament held by the Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. And to borrow in part the words of one Gilbert Christensen, and he says, gratitude is happiness doubled by wonder, which for me is so apt today as my gratitude for your participation in this event is certainly multiplied by the wonder over what I have witnessed today. To the youth parliamentarians, and you know, so far we've been talking about the youth parliamentarians and we've been talking about the persons who have participated in the debate. Mr. Speaker, you've got some mention as one of those behind the scenes, but to the marshal, to the clerk, to the attendants, and the clerk at the table, your function is as important as the people who stand up and make the presentations. And I'll certainly say, and I wouldn't speak for Madam President, she can speak for herself, but I'll say for me that if the marshal isn't there to get me here for 1:30, I'm sure many times I might reach 1:31, okay? So that's how important the role of the marshal is, not just in getting us here on time, but ensuring that order is maintained in the Parliament. The attendance, I guess every parliamentarian here will tell you how important the attendance are, from, you know, bringing out papers for us, distributing things, carrying away things for us. Madam Clerk and the clerk at the table, again, your function is extremely important. The clerk gives invaluable assistance to the presiding officers. In fact, if you all watch a lot of the channel, you'll see very often when we come in, and particularly me, there's a long break between when we come in and before we start with announcements. And you would see the clerk backing the television camera, and that is giving some last-minute assistance to the presiding officer. And again, for the clerks at the table, you see how important their function is in terms of if there's a count, okay? And on one youth parliament we had, and maybe it was last year, year before, we see how important if there's a division and there's a count, the important role that the clerks at the table play. So that's why we had you all brought in, because we shouldn't really be backing you all. you all are important in the debate, as the people who would participate in the debate. So I say to the youth parliamentarians that I am marveled over who you have become in a few short weeks. You have been transformed into well-researched, well-prepared, well-dressed, articulate advocates for or against a proposal. And you have demonstrated a good familiarity with parliamentary practice and procedure and functions on particular aspects of parliamentary practice. I wish to thank you for accepting and embracing so eagerly our ongoing project of parliamentary outreach to youth. Applying the phrase of one of your government members, and I know it's somebody from this side, I don't know if it's Eula Hockett, I believe, or maybe Point Forte, I believe it was a female. In applying a phrase of one of your government members to this exercise, your participation not only affected you individually and collectively, but has positively benefited all of Trinidad and Tobago, as there now exists an additional cadre of young citizens whose interests have been ignited in constructive debate with the objective of seeking a resolution in the best interests of country. I thank you. To your teachers and parents, I salute